Hello, my name is Tony. Alright, I suppose I better get this out of the way first. In 1977, Roman Polanski, the director of Chinatown, was arrested and charged with drugging and raping a 13-year-old girl who had modelled for him the day before at the Beverly Hills home of actor Jack Nicholson. He pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor. Upon hearing that the judge was going to disregard his plea bargain attempt and sentence him up to 50 years in the pen, he fled to France, where as a French citizen he would be protected from extradition. He's lived there ever since and continued to make films. A lot of prestigious, well-respected actors, technicians and artists have worked on those films. He was awarded the Oscar for Best Director for his film The Pianist in 2003. I would suggest that compared to the Academy's attitude and their decision to reward the man with one of its highest accolades, watching and enjoying Chinatown is small beer. But it's likely going to stick in the craw of some, and I can understand that. By his own admission, Polanski was at least guilty of sex with a minor. To avoid paying the price for that crime, he ran away and escaped justice. To me, that's a damning indictment. When these events transpired, I'd already seen Chinatown several times and obviously couldn't unsee it. I've watched it over again since then, but with a slightly different perspective on some of the themes and outcomes, which I'll get into later. Some might feel this is a flimsy excuse on my part to justify this review, and yes, it may well be, and in respect of those feelings, should they be strong, I would suggest don't watch it then, this review or the film. Separating the art from the artist can be a tricky business, especially as Polanski turned out to be allegedly a nonce and a sexual predator. As both a parent and grandparent, I'm instantly and instinctively repelled by the unjustifiable abhorrence that is child sexual abuse and exploitation. Considering that Polanski's wife, actress Sharon Tate, was murdered by Charles Manson's hippie cult in 1969 when she was 8 months pregnant with his child, that should have, one would have thought, better informed his behaviour towards vulnerable females. Clearly, it was not the case. Here's the thing, Chinatown is not just Polanski's best film, it's one of the best American films ever made, and one of my all-time favourites. I can't change that he directed it, and if I could, I wouldn't, because it wouldn't be the same film at all. What I can do is just focus on the film itself as a piece of entertainment art. If you've seen it, whether you knew about Polanski beforehand or not, whatever the case, like me, you can't unsee it. And if you could, would that change anything or make a difference? Like, would he care, for instance? If you haven't seen it, whether you do seek it out is a matter dependent on your own personal value system, your right to choose, and your conscience and how you feel. With that, I'll leave it there. Screenwriter Robert Towne took his cues and influences from the hard-boiled detective fiction of the likes of Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler, along with any number of classic film noir pictures from a golden period in movie history. Although Chinatown is set in the Los Angeles of 1937 and the setup is traditional private eye shtick, complete with familiar character types and tropes, it's very much a 1970s product. It is reflective of post-Watergate mistrust, paranoia, and feelings of helplessness in the face of the corrosive power of corporate greed. Illicit, cruel, illegal dealings lie at the very heart of the narrative. It is the rotten, corrupt nucleus around which characters and events revolve, an invisible, irresistible maelstrom into which everyone and everything is inexorably drawn, as we who watch the film will see and come to understand. Private investigator Jake J.J. Gittes, Jack Nicholson, could be Sam Spade or Philip Marlowe if it wasn't for his lack of the same honourable intentions and white knight syndrome inherent in those guys. He's not your regular fictional PI hero. He specialises in domestic cases, gathering evidence to confirm to concerned husbands and wives the existence of spousal infidelity by their other halves. It's useful for securing a favourable outcome in the divorce courts. Business is good. Gittes has a nice office, 2 associate partners on the payroll, Walsh, Joe Mantell, and Duffy, Bruce Glover, and an attractive secretary, Sophie, Nandu Hines. A woman calling herself Evelyn Mulray, Diane Ladd, wife of Hollis Mulray, Darryl Zwirling, the chief engineer of the Los Angeles Water and Power Company, turns up to employ Gittes to investigate her husband's suspected infidelity, which with minimal persuasion he does, obtaining photographs of Mulray meeting with a very young lady in secret. During his investigations following the man, Gittes is intrigued by Mulray's behaviour. At a public meeting, he refuses to build a new dam to meet the city's need for water, as an earlier construction gave way and caused multiple deaths. He insists this new one will be built on unstable foundations and be just as dangerous. Gittes follows him to an almost dry riverbed and a cove on the coast. In both areas there are water outlet pipes. When Gittes provides photographs to Mrs. Mulray of her husband meeting with a young lady in compromising circumstances, they quickly wind up on the front pages of local newspapers, effectively ruining the man's reputation. When the real Evelyn Mulray, Faye Dunaway, attends Jake's office with her lawyer threatening court proceedings, the detective realizes he's been played. Someone wanted Mulray discredited and used Jake and his agency to do it. He's not best pleased about this and starts digging for answers. Visiting a reservoir to try and speak to Mulray, Jake finds his ex-police partner, Lieutenant Lou Escobar Perry Lopez, already on the scene. Jake worked with Lou when they were both cops in Chinatown. Mulray is drowned at the reservoir, suspiciously so it is found later, with salt water and not fresh water in his lungs. Jake persuades Evelyn to drop the court case against him and employ him to investigate her husband's death as a homicide instead. Now, for those of you who want to know exactly what's going on and how it ends, keep watching and listening. For those of you who don't want it spoiled, skip ahead a couple of minutes. Okay, I'll wrap through the deal. Evelyn's husband, Hollis, used to be in partnership with her obscenely wealthy father, Noah Cross, John Houston. Cross offers Gittes a significant amount of money to focus his inquiries on finding the girl Hollis was having an affair with. He doesn't elaborate on why he wants her found. Jake discovers that tons of water is being pumped through the outlet pipes at night. It's being deliberately wasted. Odd thing for the water and power company to do in the middle of a drought. Meanwhile, surrounding land populated by orange groves and farmsteads is starved of water, denied irrigation. The landowners are being forced to sell up and move out. The woman masquerading as Evelyn, real name Ida Sessions, is in fact a hooker, a chippy for hire. She contacts Gittes by phone, apparently fearing for her life. She won't tell him who hired her, but does tell him to check out an obituary column in one of the daily papers. Clues lead Evelyn and Gittes to a care facility. The new owners of the land are found to be the elderly residents of the facility, who are by and large close to death and unaware they own any land of any kind. One of the names on the deeds is the same as that of an ex-resident who has recently passed away. It was his name in the obituary column. When these people die, someone gets ownership of the land that's been bought in their names. That someone is Noah Cross. After escaping from the facility and the clutches of water and power company enforcer Mulvihill, Roy Jensen, Evelyn and Jake take refuge at her place and begin a sexual relationship. When Evelyn gets a phone call in the middle of the night, she leaves to attend to something but won't share with Jake what it is. Jake follows her to a house where two of Evelyn's Chinese servants are looking after the young girl with whom Hollis was having an affair. When confronted, Evelyn explains that she is just trying to help the girl, who is in fact her younger sister Catherine Belinda Palmer. Jake goes home. The next day he gets an anonymous phone call directing him to the house of Ida Sessions. Arriving at her place, he finds her dead, murdered. Escobar is there with his partner Loach, Dick Bacallion. Escobar suspects Evelyn of involvement in the murder of both her husband and Ida and demands Jake produce her. Back at Mulray Mansion, Jake finds Evelyn gone and the servants packing up the house. In a saltwater pool in the grounds, Jake spots a pair of broken spectacles. He deduces they belong to Hollis, and this is where he was drowned. The body then moved to the reservoir to make it look like a tragic accident or suicide. Returning to the house where Catherine is being held, Jake rages at Evelyn, slapping her around until she tells him the truth. Catherine is both her sister and her daughter. She had an incestuous relationship with her father, Noah Cross, who raped her when she was 15, getting her pregnant. Hollis Mulray married her and took care of both Evelyn and her child. She denies the spectacles Jake found belonged to Hollis. He didn't wear bifocals. The glasses belonged to Noah, who first discredited Hollis using Gittes and then murdered him in an argument. He'd found out about the corrupt land grab scam and was threatening to blow it wide open. Cross and Mulvihill forced Jake to accompany them to Chinatown, where Evelyn and Catherine have been hiding out at the home of Evelyn's Chinese manservant. The women are intending to flee to Mexico, something Jake has arranged after putting Duffy and Walsh in charge of their security. Escobar and Roach are also there looking to arrest Evelyn on suspicion of murder. When Cross arrives and tries to take custody of Catherine, Evelyn panics Alex and shoots him in the arm. She and Catherine make a break for it in the car. Loach opens fire. The car slows and crashes to a halt with a horn blaring and Catherine screaming. When Jake gets there, Evelyn is found to be dead, shot through the back of the head. Cross bundles Catherine away. Duffy and Walsh lead Jake from the scene. Walsh delivering the famous final line of the film, "Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown." Yes, it's Chinatown, a Swiss watch film. I term it so due to the meticulous mechanics that drive it. It is smooth, intricate and precise, never skips a beat, shifts along on buttered monorails, slow paced but immaculately and elegantly mounted, sleek as a mouthful of Baileys over a velvet tongue. Every shot in every scene is scrupulous and fluent, no fat, bloat or waste, just sheer deliberate relevance. Objectively, this is largely due to Polanski's daring, visionary and context-sensitive direction, and in my opinion, it's his best work, the pinnacle of his career. What makes it so involving is the structure and how the audience discovers everything the exact same time Gittes does. It looks and sounds a joy, the period setting authentically realised in all its sun-drenched splendour. Cinematography by John A. Alonzo is a crisp, simmering feast for the eyes. The same visual sensibilities employed here he would later bring to Dick Richards' decent retread of Farewell My Lovely a year or so later. Jerry Goldsmith's plaintive jazzy score is molten gold dripped into the oral canals, evoking some great retro atmospherics. Goldsmith composed and recorded it in just 10 days. Can you believe that? The casting is impeccable. Nicholson, who Town had in mind when he wrote the script, is in every scene. The film is perceived through his eyes. His extensive acting career is littered with standout roles and performances, and Jake J.J. Gittes is one of his very best. Whether telling lewd racist jokes, firing off witty and flippant one-liners, being crass and insulting, or considerate and insightful, a civilized investigator or brutish lout, he schools us in a masterclass of interpretive characterization. He is the vehicle taking us on the journey that makes it such a compelling ride. Faye Dunaway, the most poised and aesthetically sculpted of female movie stars, keeps up with the pace he sets. She's all icy cool fragility and vulnerable neurosis. Her surface calm and reserve, her mask stretched tight, always seemingly mere microseconds away from cracking. Yet she retains and radiates the dangerous sexual allure of all the best screen femme fatales, even though she is essentially an irreparably damaged victim. Evelyn is a complex character, and Dunaway storms it 100%. Bravely, veteran actor-director John Huston took on what was likely his most challenging role, certainly his most unsympathetic. Noah Cross is a malign plague, an incestuous, depraved, parasitic monster of a man. Protected by his wealth and power, he believes he can buy, cheat, swindle, abuse, and own anything and get away with anything, including child rape and murder. Huston plays him as a rough-hewn but courtly old curmudgeon who would strike as generally harmless if it wasn't for the underlying threat in the subtext of his every word and action. Stellar work from this cinematic giant. As for the supporting cast, Jesus, what an ensemble. I may be doing the individuals an injustice by failing to address them all individually, but if I did that, I'd still be here this time next week. All I can say is there's not one bum note among the lot of them, and everyone, so far as I'm concerned, is perfectly appointed. The stars aligned. There are certain scenes that stamp themselves indelibly into the cortex. They all involve Nicholson. He's advising distraught client Curly, Burt Young, not to eat the new Venetian blinds in his office when he buries his face in them in despair at finding his wife has been unfaithful. The dirty joke he over-enthusiastically relates to Duffy and Walsh, whilst oblivious to the fact that the real Evelyn Mulray is stood just behind him. The nostril-slitting scene, an amusing cameo from Polanski as a flick-knife-wielding thug shoving his blade up Jake's nose. The confrontation with the farmers in the orange groves, the escape from the care facility after beating the living shit out of Mulverhill, his admission that he tried to help a woman when he worked the beat in Chinatown and she ended up getting hurt instead. History primed to repeat, Jake. Faye Dunaway baring her breast, something I don't remember her ever doing previously or since on screen. And of course, the shocking and controversial ending down in Chinatown with Evelyn's eye socket blown out. To Robert Towne's screenplay, many fellow screenwriters reference it as the premier example of the art. I would largely agree. It's so clever, literate, smart, sophisticated, and flawlessly structured, it's difficult to think of something that does it better. Which brings me on to this. I said earlier that repeat viewings in the light of historic events have afforded me some slightly different perspective on some of the themes and outcomes. There's a certain knowledge that contributes to that. The ending wasn't what Towne originally wrote or wanted. His screenplay had Evelyn killing Cross and going to prison for it. She refuses to say why she killed her father, and Jake, who knows the reason, won't say either because that's the way she wants it. Still a pretty bleak conclusion, but not as bleak as the one we got. Polanski didn't agree with Towne's finale. The two had a major falling out and parted company on bad terms. Never the twain shall meet again. So the ending we got was written by Polanski. Now many years later, Towne allowed in an interview that after some reconsideration, he thought Polanski's ending was the better one, but at the time, it was a far different story. Now, if this was Raymond Chandler, Philip Marlowe, for instance, would have been beaten up, shot at, betrayed, abused, lied to, probably not made any money or got the girl, but his moral code would be intact. He would have cracked the case, the bad guys would have been brought to book in some way, shape or form. What I find interesting about the ending of Chinatown nowadays is how Noah Cross, a mega corrupt, morally bankrupt, paedophile rapist, incest jockey and murderer, prevails right down the line. The daughter he raped, who is an ever-present threat to his reputation, dies. He gets his claws into Catherine, physically drags her into his orbit. So there's the potential for the cycle of abuse to continue. And no one wants to listen to anything Jake has to say about Mulray's murder, or the land grab scam, or his accusations regarding Cross. He's just dragged away through Chinatown, broken and bereft. I won't argue it's not a fitting ending for the cynical, politically and culturally bruised and beleaguered 70s. But it intrigues me the way Polanski was thinking, the notes on which he closed out the film, because later life, his life, imitated art. He became the alleged paedophile rapist for real, one who escaped justice and accountability to enjoy a long, productive life of wealth, privilege and freedom. Did he always feel such things were somehow justifiable? Is that why he let Cross off the hook? Or am I just overthinking things? I once saw a list some critic had compiled of film titles considered to be meaningless or irrelevant to the films they fronted. Chinatown was up there along with Straw Dogs and others. Hardly any of the titles were meaningless. It's just the dickhead who compiled the list didn't know what they meant. There's a difference. Chinatown, the title of the film, and the city district itself is a metaphor for forces imposing circumstances beyond our control and the bad things that happen to us. At one point, Jake is asked what he did in Chinatown. He replies as little as possible. Philosophically, it represents his failure in a place where the police were better served doing nothing because no one knew what was really going on there, or if whatever action taken helped or succeeded only in exacerbating the exploitation of victims. Thematically, it's a place where history repeats. In many ways, Chinatown is less a concrete location and more a state of mind. Just as an aside, after making Chinatown, Jack Nicholson discovered that the woman he thought was his sister all his life was actually his mother. Setting the Polanski of the real world aside, difficult as that may be, I can only reiterate that as a piece of cinema, an object of art, a vessel of entertainment, Chinatown is a symbol of just how great American movies once were. It's up there with The Godfather, Jaws, Dirty Harry, and all the rest of those icons of genius. Even on repeat viewings, I see something new, layers peeling away to expose something else, alternative meanings, something to captivate or shock or stimulate new thoughts and interpretations. Now I've finished this review, I just might go back and watch it again. Thank you for your time and attention. Do whatever you want to do next. Hit like, don't like, comment, subscribe, be a patron of my Patreon thing. Make a financial contribution via the thanks button. This has been an exhausting one to do, a strangely intense undertaking, so I may be taking some time off. But like the man who put the man in Fu Manchu said,
"The world shall hear from me again."
I'm not him, obviously, but the world will hear from me again as well, is what I'm saying, probably. Well, don't all cheer at once.